Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zagreb Film Festival Industry Program. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Srđan Laterca, and I will be your moderator today. And let me apologize for a short delay. Thank you for staying tuned. Once again, welcome to Masterclass Games Without Borders European co-production by Thierry Baujard. This event is a part of Digitaling, a gaming and citizenship project organized by Institut Français de Croatie and Goethe-Institut Croatian, supported by Franco German Cultural Fund and EDU for Games Initiative. The core part of Digitaling has been a mentorship program for professional independent video games from Serbia, Slovenia, and Croatia, focused on polishing the final product and developing distribution and marketing strategies. The teams have been mentored by experienced industry professionals and professors from universities in Cologne and Angoulême. One of our mentors focused on the business aspect of video games was also Thierry Baujard, our speaker today. Hello, Thierry, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And before I introduce Thierry and before we hear his lecture, I will introduce our other guests today that will join us in the panel after Thierry's lecture. I'm very pleased that our guests today are Mr. Chris Marcic, who spent 16 years working for the government of the United States. He was the assistant of U.S. Trade Representative for Europe, responsible for trade relations within the region. And from 1995 till 2016, he served as president and international business coordinator for the Motion Picture Association in the US. He is currently CEO of the Croatian Audiovisual Center. Welcome, Chris. We also have with us Davor Švajić, an educator and a professional in the audiovisual sector, manager in the field of culture and art. As a Vice Dean for International and Institutional Cooperation at the Academy of Dramatic Arts at the University of Zagreb, Davor is currently managing the project EDU for Games, focused on developing a game design master's program at the University of Zagreb. And we also have with us Andrej Levensky, who is the technical director and co-founder of Gamepires, and also director of the cluster of Croatian video game developers. Andrej is an industry veteran of 16 years. He co-founded Gamepires 10 years ago, working on the in-house Prana engine used on the award-winning Gas Guzzlers Extreme Racing Combat game. He spent last 4 years working on Scum, a hit multiplayer survival game and one of the most popular games that are ever made by a Croatian studio. So welcome, Andrej, and welcome everyone. And before Thierry's panel, let me introduce Thierry. Thierry Baujard has 20 years of experience in the entertainment industry with a focus on financing. He provides mentoring and support on funding for video game studios through the accelerator called SpielFabrique. He holds an MBA from Bocconi University in Italy and UCLA in Los Angeles. Thierry has been involved in different creative industries funding schemes for the film, music, and video game sectors, as well as in the expert for the European Commission. In the past, he worked for Vivendi Group in London, Arte, and the studio Babelsberg in Berlin. So Thierry, thanks again for joining us. Are you ready?
Welcome.
Okay, so the stage is yours. Okay,
hello everybody.
The stage is yours,
yes.
Or the screen is yours. So
yes, I have to share my screen first. So I hope it should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. It's great.
It's good. Okay, perfect. So now see if I can move things. So welcome everybody. So this is a masterclass about European co-production for video game. That's what I'm going to talk about. So yeah, to start with, I will do a small introduction and present. Okay, you just presented me. I will just give a bit more details about that and explain a little bit what is SpielFabrique. And then I will talk very briefly about the current trends, the video game industry, to understand a bit what's happening. And then I will really focus on the financing project how do we finance game, and what's happening at the moment. And the last 2 points are really about co-production, because it's a bit the focus we decided to have for this masterclass.
If I can just interrupt you for a second, excuse me, just a notice to our audience that they can ask questions under the video, so on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll try to answer it after your lecture. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem, you're welcome. So I will focus at the end on the different co-production model, and giving you a case study as well of co-production between France and Germany, and then talking about this co-production market that we've been developing. So that's roughly the table of content for the day and for the evening, and I will talk about 40-45 minutes about that. So I think to start as an introduction, I think just to make it clear, and also I know that we are also part of the audiovisual festival. I think it's very important to understand that the video game industry is booming, has been booming for many years. It's a young industry, not so old, the cinema industry, and it's really booming. And I think what is interesting about video games, just to make it very brief, is that first it's digital native. So it's really from the beginning only digital. I mean, nearly there were some products, but let's say we can say it's digital native. Second thing, which is a big difference with the cinema, is that it's global native. It's working with different platforms that are also already global and appearing everywhere in the world. So that's a very important point. And then just now we can see that it's COVID resistant, which is what used to be the cinema. Cinema used to be resistant to the war, to crisis, etc. And we see with this COVID crisis that video game has been really resilient to this pandemic. Not even resilient, but really booming with some very strong growth number. So it's quite important to see that. So you presented me before, so thanks very much. So I'll just go very quickly, because I've been, as you said, involved in the financing. That's really my focus is really on the financing of the creative sector. And I'm coming from film finance, so I understand quite well the audiovisual world. And I worked for Vivendi in London, it's true, as well, but mainly on projects in Los Angeles for Universal, when Vivendi bought Universal, and also in Berlin at the Studio Babelsberg, where I was the head of strategy and the financing for the project at the end of the 90s. And then I stayed in Berlin, so I'm still based in Berlin. And I've decided to develop a different, let's say, group of companies specialized in financing for the sector. Because as you know, I guess this is a very complex sector, I would say, difficult sector to finance with a strong mix of different types of investors. And we thought it would be interesting to really develop some specificities about how to finance companies in the sector. So I'm running different companies. This is 4 of them. I've got a bit more on top, but I think that will be enough for today. The first one is called Peaceful Fish, and is doing mainly policy work for the European Commission and a lot on the film side. And by the way, a few years ago, my company Peaceful Fish, we helped to create the tax credit for the film in Croatia, and we also worked on many different tools like that for financing in the sector in many countries in Europe, from Malta to Finland, etc., and including Croatia. And if I may say something about that, our work on the tax credit was the fastest work we did for a tax credit compared to any other country. In 3 months, it was all done. It was agreed by the parliament. It was a very nice and efficient experience. The second company is called Media Deals, and Media Deals is focusing mainly on private investment. So it's a pan-European investment networks, just focusing on the creative sector. We are targeting 4 main groups of sectors. We are working on the audiovisual sector, of course, so film, TV series, XR, VR. We are doing gaming, obviously. Third, we are doing music and music tech, so especially music publishing and music technology. And fourth point, we're doing for the last year, we started on fashion tech as well. So any technology attached to wearable or fashion. So this company, Mediadis, has been helping many startups in the digital creative side to find investors and also to syndicate investors across Europe. One of the issues that we see in the investment level in creative sector is the lack of cross-border and syndication. People tend to be very local, etc., which is good. It's very important to have local investor. But if you want to grow and really scale, at some point you need to find a syndicate from other countries to develop that. The third company is called Just Temptation, and it's a fund we created now about I would say 7 or 8 years ago now. We're focusing just on how to finance original music in film and TV series. We understood that it was a gap in the market that was difficult always to finance good, really high quality film music for original music for film. And so we created a fund, and we did about I think we have now about 40 projects that we have financed, and so we have created like a publishing company of more than 1,200 titles. So that's also quite an interesting instrument for financing. And then of course SpielFabrique, which I will go in more details after. It's a game accelerator program that we started 4 years ago with my partner. But you can see Dawn, Odile Limpa. Odile Limpa, she's also French, based in Düsseldorf as well in Germany. And she's been 20 years the CEO of Ubisoft Germany, both from the publishing side and the studio side with Blue Byte company. And for the last 4 years, she's a professor at the Cologne Game Lab in Cologne, but participated as well in the mentoring program. And just to finish on that, as an investor, I've been also investing in different companies, so game studios, and as I say as well, the music and also startup platforms, 2 startup platforms in Europe, because I think it's a very important point. So that's about my background on that. SpielFabrique, just quickly to understand, we started, as I said, 4 years ago with Odile to develop this program. The idea was relatively simple: to professionalize independent studio and to do it in a cross-border side and in a virtual way. So not having the people to just incubate in one point, but having people from different countries and developing this kind of peer connection. And we have every year we have about 8 to 10 studios from France and Germany, because we have been focusing on France and Germany to start with, to develop the project and to accelerate them. And this year we were happy, of course, that's how we made the first contact, to have 3 Croatian studios participated in our mentoring. Also this year we had from Switzerland, and also we are starting a big project with Africa. So if you are interested in that, you can talk to me per chat. But we started with Goethe Institute as well, a big project about gaming in Africa, and we did a pilot with 3 studios this year. But as from next year, we will have much more, and we will create a complete mentoring program with African studio, which is a very interesting new market to develop. So we have created this kind of cross-border community, about 100 plus developers from all indies. And our virtual acceleration program is, yes, individual mentoring, professionalization. We do pitching training. We focus only on the business side, so marketing, publishing strategy. We are working on this co-production market that I will talk about, and also creating this kind of platform of experts. We think it's very important to have access to different partners from different parts of the world. and we've been working on that in the last 4 years. All that has been supported by very strong partners that we've been acquiring that are very strong. So like Arte, for example, the Franco German TV channel, who is also developing games now, Ubisoft, Blue Byte in Germany, and then some regions in France and in Germany, Switzerland, Goethe Institute, Belgium, and the Franco German office for young people. So it's all that, and it's been a very interesting development, because we had the feeling that there was something missing like that on the market, and today we have a very strong interest in it. Also, the fact that we do everything virtual and cross-border is also very good during the pandemic, because we've been used to do that for the last 4 years, and we have some very efficient tools as well to mentor the different people, and we are really interested in developing this kind of community. So, for example, we create this what we call the SpielFabrique family. Is all the studio participate in 1 year, can always come the years after to participate in the workshop and the virtual discussion that we have. It's always open to everyone. So some current trends, very simple, just to be on the same page all together. I mean, in terms of media revenue, I mean, game is now the highest. So above books, which always been very strong, very important. So definitely we're talking about a young industry, but very strong in terms of business. It makes a lot of money, as you can see, compared to music or film. I mean, music is very small compared to that. So it's quite an interesting, and it's one of the reasons why I also moved from film to games, even though I still I love film and I still work in film, but as you can see there is really a big difference between the other sectors and gaming. The number of games, I mean, that's obviously the other side of the coin, is that it's been so successful that there are millions of games available, and of course that's a little bit the problem. So that's, for example, on Steam, as you can see, it's going a little bit down, because obviously there were too many games. But you see, in 2013, with 565 games, that was very nice at this time, and now it's not exactly the same thing. And it's a little bit the same for all the new platforms. I mean, like last year, we did a lot of projects on Switch, Nintendo, and now it's again a lot of competition, etc. So that's of course this problem of visibility of competition, but of course it shows that it's also not just simple to create a game, and that the issue today is maybe not about production, but really about distributing and finding customers, because the competition is so strong. Another important point, of course, is the size of the games. I mean, of course, these are examples of the AAA games, and a lot of them, as you can see, are also attached to film IP. But the idea is that some games can be very expensive, can be really very expensive. Of course, you can do games for very cheap, maybe surely much cheaper than doing a film, maybe now. But that's really also one of the difficulties, that it's relatively easy to use different tools to do games, but you have a big range and you have different types of games, and the size of the budget, the marketing, the audiences as well are obviously very different compared to the type of the project. So just very simplistic, but to make it quick, about the value chain, because I think it's important. Also, if you're coming from the film sector, today is relatively easy. You have a developer, which in film we will call a producer, and then you have a publisher, but in film vocabulary we will say it's a sales company, distributor, or sales company, and then you have a platform in game. So it's the Apple platform, the Google platform, or the different, streaming platform. And yeah, that's where it's much more complicated in film. You have in films many different platforms. You have cinema, you have TV, you have now streaming platform. You have lots of different possibility, and all that is by territory. And the difference is that here in game, we're not talking about territory by territory, but it's global. All these most of these platforms, I mean, I think 90% of these platforms are global. So that means your game is available straight away in Hong Kong, in everywhere. As for a film, it's obviously much more difficult to get distributed in many countries, and maybe it's going to be done with delay, etc. Game is much more instant for that. Okay, so the problem for me is the two problems in this value chain is between the developer and the publisher. What is the relationship? How do you finance the project with or without the publisher? What are the sources of financing? And in the second part of the project is how do you increase the visibility? How do you make a difference and can be competitive and attract some international customer? Because of course you have to be international to attract the people, because it's going to be on platforms everywhere. Okay. So that's, I think, something that is much straightforward in game compared to film, this value chain, even though, okay, of course, there could be some different types, different aspects to that, but it's less complex than in the film world, I would say. So in terms of the current trends in the video game, I mean, we see this kind of 4 phases. And today we are between the third and the fourth phase, I guess. I mean, the phase 1 at the beginning of the gaming is that developers work for international publishers, Electronic Arts, etc. And it was basically work for hire, very simple. And then the internet came, and then suddenly you could become, an independent publisher and do your self-publishing. Of course, after a while, there were so many games, as you saw, everybody could put on platform. The platforms are offering global distribution, but as I say, the visibility is how can you make sure that your game is going to be spotted and bought, okay? And today, we think we are, as I say, between this phase 3 and phase 4, is really this idea of, okay, we've done a game, we've published ourselves, or we work with a publisher, and okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't work, it's not very sustainable. And today the idea is to be more professional, to internationalize the project, to access more different types of funding, and like that to be able to really get a better exposure. Okay, so really from developing just a game, the idea is how do we get to the clients, and how do we find the right financing to get to the right clients who will actually pay for the project. So in terms of financing the project, there are different ways. I mean, of course, you could self-financing, and you still see many independent studios just saying, okay, I'm doing my game, I don't need financing. I mean, I'm just doing that on my spare time, or I decided to do that, or every night or every weekend, and to do that, and you still see game. And of course, some of these games are very good, obviously, and some can be successful. Then you've got private financing, so private funding. So basically, it's private funds. So we'll talk a bit more after that about that, but it's specialized funds in gaming, is venture capital company, could be business angel, I mean, typical financier, I would say. And then you've got the publisher, which is obviously private money, and publishers have a different role of distributing on the global market, bringing some marketing, etc., and they also bring some private financing. And then you've got public financing. And public financing today, you've got some at the European, national, and regional level. I'll go a bit more in details after, but you've got the subsidy, loans, and the tax credit. So you see already that there is a potential mix, even though it's less or not so sophisticated, I would say, but in the film business, still you see, very some similarities about the way it's financed, is privately financed, publicly financed, and you can obviously mix both if you want, or when you can, to access more financing. So if we go a bit more in details, so the private funds, as I say, there are a few specialized funds. There are not many, but there are a few. To be honest, today they are mostly in Northern Europe. We're talking about UK, Sweden, Finland. That's where you find mostly the specialized funds. So these are people who are really experts in the game sector and invest only in game sector. So they are not generalist venture capital, but they are really interested in that. And then from the other type of funds, or what I call traditional funds, or more like venture funds, today they are quite reluctant to invest in the sector because they don't understand. I think for me, it's a lack of expertise. They don't understand how it works and who is who. I mean, as I say, it's not so complex like the film side. I think in film, it's giving another level of sophistication and complexity for funding. But game is relatively simple, but they need to understand who is doing what and how does it work and who gets what. And this lack of expertise is what is blocking a little bit more the traditional VCs to come on board. Some are coming, to be honest, it's coming. And I see during the COVID period, you have more and more traditional companies who have come to game because obviously they saw the good results as well of the sector. So it's definitely will come, but they will need some specialized, some expertise about that. And then very important, most of the private funds invest more in companies and not in games. Okay, so that's a very important difference to do, is that these venture capital companies, they normally acquire shares in the companies and not necessarily in a game. There are some exceptions, especially with the specialist fund in gaming, but most of the typical venture capital company will invest in companies and not in the game. Okay. Publisher, today they are mostly the main investor in the project for most of the games, I think, in Europe. They are bringing marketing capabilities, and of course, one of the questions is, okay, how do they control the IP, or are they just distributing the game, or are they also part of the development, etc.? So there are quite a lot of discussion, and especially in Eastern Europe, publishers are very strong. They are strong everywhere. I mean, for me, all projects should have a publisher, but I think especially because in Eastern Europe there is less sources of other type of financing, publishers are of course very strong in this part of Europe. In terms of public money, I think we've got three types at the moment. We've got subsidies, so it's basically grants that you can get for free. The questions are more about, okay, if you want to get grants, you should own a big part of the IP of your game. So it's not a work for hire, it's really original IP. And then today it's more and more developed around this idea of local spend. So you get a grant only if you spend in this region or in this country. And you have to go most of the time now through this cultural test. But of course, you know as well from the film side that is coming slowly but surely into the game sector. So for example, France is very strong in giving grants and have this system of cultural tests. But for example, Germany is doing more loans. So Germany is quite interesting at the moment because, I mean, as you know, it's a very federal country. So most until 2019, all the cultural money is done by regions and not by the center of Germany. So some region, I mean, I think there are 6 or 7 regions now in Germany who give money for game. They've been really leading that with very strong funds in Bavaria and in the Düsseldorf Cologne area, where you can get up to sometimes 500,000 euro in funding for your game. So it's quite happy. quite big. And since 2019, there's been an introduction of a federal fund, which is a 50 million fund every year for the next 5 years now, to really focusing just on games. Okay, so now in Germany, for example, you have both federal and regional funding on that. For the regional funds, these are loans. That means it's not a straight grant. It's money that we give you and that you may have to repay if the game is successful. Okay, so it's a little bit different, and many countries are looking into that as well. This idea of having a kind of repayable loan. Okay. And then the last point, which is the only automatic system, because what I talked about before are selective systems, so there is always a jury looking into that, even though the federal fund in Germany is, I would call it like a semi-automatic, because it's a little bit in between. It's not automatic, but it's not it's a different type of jury, I would say, than the typical cultural fund. And you have the tax credit. So, as I say, you know very well for the film sector, and it's existing in France and the UK only at the moment in Europe. Canada has one as well. But there are some discussion about that, about creating other ones. Italy is talking about it, and Belgium is going to start introducing this tax shelter like they do in film, but for the gaming. So that is tax credit. Is very simple. I mean, for example, in France, it's all the spend you have done in France, you get 30% back of what you have spent in France. So very simple. So all that, as you see, is very game oriented. Yes, it's game financing. And as I told you before, the problem with private companies is that they invest. I mean, the private funds are investing more in companies than in games. So there is a kind of discrepancy there. We start seeing that in France, for example, BPI, which is the public fund in France, are starting now to invest in gaming studio and not just in the game. So that, I think that's coming slowly. And then the European Investment Fund, as you may know, have started a loan guarantee system that also works for game and can help as well in the cash flow question. So all that is there, but it's not so developed in Europe. I mean, if we talk about the top side, you see, of course, France is there, Germany is there, a little bit of Spain, Belgium is there as well. The UK is also very, very strong, but there's not so much for the gaming, and also the size is also limited. And then on the bottom, you see more things that could be related to game. Companies like R&D, SME, for example, where you could get some support, but of course, it doesn't fit exactly what the game studio is doing. I mean, I'm also the evaluator at the European Commission for the SME instrument, the new EIC accelerator, and I see quite a lot of gaming companies pitching for money for game engine, for example. So there are some ways to get some money on the R&D side, but I think today it should be really focusing more on the grants and the content side. And as you see, that the top side, it's very limited. Even countries like Sweden and Finland, that's also very interesting. For example, Sweden doesn't have any public financing. Okay, they have a very strong private financing community based on people who have made quite a lot of money or a lot of money in Sweden, like with King, for example, and also they have created a stock market platform in Stockholm with Nasdaq just for game companies, and now people are raising millions and millions on the Nasdaq in Stockholm, for example. So it's another way to access money. But it's interesting to see that some companies, like some countries like Sweden or Finland, don't have a lot of or nothing in support, and still are very strong in the game sector. I must say Sweden is a bit particular, because even in film, I think it's the last country in Europe that doesn't have a tax credit in film. So I think the Swedes are definitely against all this kind of tax credit system. So that's maybe more a political decision than anything else. So now, if we go into this idea of co-production model, I mean that's the important part. I mean, I think if some of you come from a film side, you understand that very well, and we are basically following the same pattern. Is that you have a studio in a country A who is developing a project, and say, okay, I'm going to talk to another studio in country B, so another country, and we're going to pool expertise together to develop the game together, which is, I think, something relatively new for the game sector, which is not for the film sector, but for the game sector, it's quite new, is to say, okay, we're not going to develop our game alone. We're going to do it with someone else, with another studio. And I think this change of mindset is very important. It doesn't have to be all the time, of course, but for some, it could be really interesting. So it's the same. I mean, in the country A, you spend your money, you have percentage. So I guess the majority of the intellectual property, you have expertise in certain domain, you access the market, you access the national funding. And the country B is doing the same. Is accessing some money in his country. He owns a part of the intellectual property, and at the end we have something with better quality, bigger production, better market fit as well, instead of doing that alone. And also for me, I think it's very important is to be able to have a better negotiation position towards investors and publishers. Very often developers come with a small project, they just have a prototype, they don't have a lot of money. And of course, when they talk to publisher or financier, they don't really get a very good deal. If they come with this kind of co-production, suddenly they are in a much better position, and it could change many things. So of course, like an example between France and Germany. So of course, France and Germany are very interesting at the moment because, as I say, there's quite a lot of money in both countries, and that's why we are pushing really into that. But you see, the French studio gets the French money from the CNC, get the tax credit, can get maybe some money from one region, and the German studio gets the money from the ministry and from a region, and then they work together and give some visibility for France and Germany, but also, of course, beyond that. So, I mean, to be really clear about that, today it's completely possible. It's been possible for always to combine that. The thing is that studios are not doing that today so much, and they are not trying to develop this kind of co-production. And we are obviously very interested to push for that. And so if we talk about the benefits, I mean, of course, it's increasing the access to funding. You have stronger international expertise, a good balance between risk and benefits, maybe hopefully higher quality game, enriching the game and accessing to new markets and in contact. And okay, there are some issues. It's not so simple always. The production may take some more time because you have to work with someone else. Risk of communication problem, administrative, of course, processes, because today between the countries, there's no treaty, there's no agreement like in the film world. So today people are doing what they want. So it could be a bit heavy in that situation. So just to show you a little bit an example of a project. This is a project we did between France and Germany, and now it's been finished 2 years ago. And basically, it's called Homo Machina, as you saw, and it's a French game. I mean, it started from a French company, and it's interesting because it was an adaptation of a designer and a doctor in Germany called Fritz. So it was a bit German already, Franco German, and so it's a puzzle game in 2D and really open for tablet and smartphone basically. And what we did is we had, as I say, one leading French studio at Darjeeling in France, and then one German studio called Feierabend in Berlin, and it was co-produced with Arte already because Arte was already interested in that. So the French studio got money from the French side, the German studio got money from the regional fund in Berlin. Arte also became the publisher because they're also publishing some of their games. Platforms where I say Apple, Google, and Switch. And yeah, Homo Machina was mainly produced in France. We did a little bit in Germany, but to be honest, we had a very large success in Germany. In fact, we sold more games in Germany than in France. So that was quite interesting. And we did only 20% of the budget in Germany because we brought less than 20%. And we did 2D animation, teaser, marketing, and we launched the game at the Berlin Game Week, which was also quite interesting. So we got more funding, interesting, above what the maximum that we could have got in France. That's a very important concept. I mean, they got everything they could have in France, and then they needed more budget. So that's why we thought and we started to say, okay, let's go outside France to get that. It was good for them as well because they had access to a creative studio in Berlin who brought also ideas, even though the creative side was developed in France. We had extra marketing budget for the launch and the German market. Strong interest from cultural media. It means that because of this thing on FritzCan that was not very well known in Germany, there were a lot of discussion and articles in the press as well about how can a French game company bringing, kind of heritage from Germany from the 20s back to Germany. So it was an interesting subject. And as I say, there were higher sales in Germany and France. Today, we have sold for nearly 300,000 euros of Homo Machina in worldwide. The issues, well, yeah, there were some difficulties. I mean, it was quite difficult to identify a studio in Berlin that could fit with the creative side of the studio in France. Communication, I mean, to be honest, it was a bit of a nightmare. And at the end, we did everything per Skype because all the things per email didn't work to explain what we wanted, etc. And to find the right co-production deal between, how do we mix, we share the ownership was found, but okay, it's always a big discussion and quite important to discuss. So very important for us is for the last 3 years, we started a co-production market to really facilitate the studio to talk to each other. Because we realized, as I said, when we started this Franco German acceleration program, that people were from France and Germany, but they didn't develop the Franco German project. They developed each of them their own project in France or in Germany. And that was something that we discovered only when we started to do this acceleration. Otherwise, we thought that people will collaborate more. So in fact, we discovered that people didn't really collaborate together. And they said, why not co-production? But where do I find a project? Where do I find a good project? So that's why we started this market 3 years ago with Arte that we've been doing in Strasbourg. This year was online, as always, for everyone. And as I say, we started in 2018, and this year we expanded with the African and Belgian project. And we start the way like that. We start to call for projects to find companies. So every year we're looking for 10 companies from France and Germany. And then this year we added 5 non-French German. So we do a call for project, and then we do a selection of the studio, and then we prepare them for the market. Because obviously most of them have their own project and they say, well, I want to do my game and I want to finance my game. So our role is to coach them and to help them to understand what they could find in the co-production market, how to be attractive to another studio and not to pitch to a publisher or to an investor. It's different. We just making sure that they understand what they can do and what they are looking for, so that they find complementary expertise to develop the project together. And then we do this market, which is 2 days, and we have different panels. We have, of course, the studio to meeting, but also with experts. We also bring publisher, we also bring financier, but more to assess the new common project. Not really about your project, but to say, okay, after the first day, you found some co-producer or some people you think you could be interested in, and you can talk to experts to see, okay, do you think it could work? What can we change? How can we make it work? So that that is quite a long work doing these 2 days. And for example, to give you some statistics about this year, we had about more than 100 people registered for the market. We had more than 60 people for the webinar. We had 6 experts, so as I say, a mix of financier and publisher and people like that. We had more than 60 meetings with experts and funds, and we had more than 70 meetings between the different studios. So to give you an idea about the interaction, for example, between the studios, these are the mutual interest, meaning after they talked the first day, each of them said, okay, I want to do a co-production with these people and these people, okay? So there were 15 mutual interests, meaning from both sides, okay? It's not just, okay, I'm interested, but the other one say, oh, I'm not interested in your project or working with you. So that was bilateral mutual side. And today now we have 5 co-production projects in progress that we are following up and helping obviously to find the money for this kind of co-production. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. I'm 43 minutes. I think that's
almost 45, yeah.
Yes, that's
great.
Right.
Thank you, Thierry, for a great lecture. I must say that your mentorships for our teams were always probably the most hard for them, because it's one thing to talk about creative stuff, the other thing is to talk about money, but everyone has to do it to realize their creative vision. So, and that's what we're going to do today also. I don't think we have any questions from the audience right now, so if we get some, we will answer them during the panel. And I will now start to start the panel with our guests. So let me just mention that we have here, apart from our speaker Thierry, we have Chris Marcic, director of Croatian Audiovisual Institute, Andrej Levensky from Gamepires, and director of a cluster of Croatian game developers, and Davor Švajić, Vice Dean at the Academy of Dramatic Arts in Zagreb, and also the lead person of EDU for Games project. So we have quite an experience and quite a varied panel of speakers, which come from both gaming and film. So we'll try to, in a way, compare co-production in film with co-production in games, and also touch on the issues the Croatian studios are facing, and touch a little bit about education. We have to go broad because it's a great opportunity to talk about it broadly, since we have a panel of guests with such an experience. So I will start with a question for Thierry to begin the panel. We saw in your presentation that you come from the audiovisual sector and then translated into games, and you mentioned that you work on tax policies, one of them being Croatian audiovisual tax policy. And maybe a broad question, but also maybe a question that will kind of help you or let you speak a little bit about this subject is, what are the main differences and similarity between state funding in films and games? We saw in your question some of it, but you mentioned, for example, working with Arte, which is a producer or an institution that now focuses both on films and television, but also on video games. So how is the sector in general reacting to the possibility of co-production in video games?
Well, I think we are at the start of this issue. I think, as I say, I showed this changing of phases. I think we are moving into now a situation where there are many games, and it's relatively easy to produce a game. Of course, to do a very good game, you need more publishing, more financing, more developer expertise, talent, etc. But the question today is more how to do maybe a bigger game, more developed, better finance, so that it can attract a better publisher and get really the visibility on the different platforms. And that's really where it's about. So it's really finding ways for independent studio to access this kind of extra money. And with private investors, I mean, as I say, I'm doing a lot with that. It's obviously most of the independent games don't really fit into a private investor strategy because it's, as I say, it's too risky. It's difficult on the scalability. It's they don't know the sector. The independent studio have no past experience, for example. So people are very reluctant on that. And with publishers, yes, it's fine, but publishers get a lot of proposition. And of course, it could be really interesting, and it's really interesting. But the question I'm always asking, and I know with the Croatian studio, we discuss quite a lot, is of course, okay, you can get any publisher is always interested in games because he doesn't want to miss, you know, the next big game. But the question is, what is he going to offer? What sort of deal is he going to offer? Is he going to bring money as well? If he does marketing, is it really specific to the game? So how good is the contract with the publisher? So, you know, that's why I was insisting on the fact that to be in a good position to talk to a publisher, I think it's better if you are in a co-production model, or you know, it could be a different types of collaboration, but you are coming with a project that is more developed, and that so you can say, okay, now I have a game and I need maybe only, I don't know, 100,000 euro instead of 1 million. And of course, you know, it's a different ball game to talk to publisher like that. For them, it's also interesting to see that they have to invest less. So it could change quite a lot the different position of an independent studio in Europe.
Thank you. One of these indie games maybe be produced by or funded by hubs. Chris, during the last 2 years, the Ministry of Culture has been giving grants to gaming products, but HAVS, the Croatian Audiovisual Center, is also gearing up to integrate the gaming sector into their activities, into your activities. What are HAVS's short-term and long-term plans regarding gaming?
Thank you, Serjan. Yeah, so the Ministry of Culture has indeed been showing an interest, quite an interest in the gaming sector as an opportunity, and is something that they would like to develop. And together with Davor Švajić, they've really provided the foundations that led to HAVS becoming involved in the gaming sector, basically. We will be moving from ad hoc funding to something that is more defined. We, in the short term, we need to develop the in-house expertise to administer a program that will be guided by rules, and so we will. We're focused now on really recruiting in-house expertise as well as industry experts to evaluate projects that will be pitched for funding. It's a model that we're familiar with because it's the model we use in the film industry. We will, of course, have to make the necessary adjustments given really the specificities of the gaming sector. But there is a lot of parallel there, and I think that you know, with the beginning of next year, we intend to actually launch our support program for the gaming sector. In the longer term, the idea is that this becomes part of the fabric of the sector in our country that will help develop a stronger base and help grow these developers into successful enterprises that stand on their own and can work without the subsidies. At HAVS will be administering a subsidies model, obviously, and we rely for the support, for our subsidies on government support and support from what we call users, but those are platforms basically that, in the case of the film sector, exploit works that we finance. So the idea for the long term is to have a sustainable program in place that feeds the sector and that helps develop it in this country and beyond our borders. So the idea long term is indeed for our own industry, if I may call it that, to have an international reach and an international presence. So that's where we're going. We're also in the process of setting up to integrate the way in which we approach the sector with the way in which it's approached in other countries. We are in the process, we've been in conversations with PEGI to introduce the rating system, the PEGI rating system for our games. I mean, I think it's already in use by some of our players, but it will become part of our program, basically. And so we had discussions with PEGI, and I expect that by the end of the year, we'll issue rules for classification that will cross-reference PEGI, basically, for the gaming sector. So that's where we are right now. It's early stages for Haafts. We've been a bit delayed by internal changes in the organization, but we're now gearing up to take off.
So Croatian game developers can expect the first call for application the next year, right?
Yes. Definitely next year. And you know, exactly when next year, we'll see it. We as at least a quasi-governmental entity, we are required to have rules and regulations that guide how we allocate the funds, and those have to go through approval procedures within, well, first of all, our council has to approve, but also the Ministry of Finance, since we're talking about using government money, and the Ministry of Culture, of course. And there we have great support, as I said.
And we know that for funding movies, for funding films, Haafts has some strict set of criteria that are mostly culturally based. Do you think some of those criteria will apply to video games, or what will the set of criteria be for funding?
I think in a broad sense, to the extent that you consider a local spend requirement to be cultural, that will undoubtedly be present in the funding that's granted for games, but it won't be exclusive. I mean, in the audiovisual sector, our preference is to promote either formal co-productions or at least co-financing with partners, other partners within Croatia and partners outside of Croatia. And I'm sure we'll move in that direction. It's attractive for a number of reasons, including some that Thierry evoked earlier in his presentation.
Right.
So co-productions, I think, are definitely an area that we will turn to for creative reasons, but also for financing reasons. And I think there, you know, we've seen some results with the media program already. Some Croatian projects recently have received some funding. That's encouraging. We will certainly be encouraging more of that.
Thank you.
And Sadan, if I may, just on that, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, just on this cultural side, I mean, I think depending on the countries, the cultural aspect is strong or less strong. I mean, a typical way in France, the cultural side for the game subsidy is quite high. In Germany, it's less. It's more on the local spend. You know, as long as you spend it in Germany in the right way, etc., it's easier accepted. In France, there is more questions about the IP ownership, etc., and the cultural side. Even though it's changing, and also through the co-production, the discussion we have now between the funds, because now we have created a working group between France and Germany for the funds to discuss about that. I mean, in fact, when you discuss with them, I think they are much more flexible than we thought at the beginning, and I think the compatibility is quite strong.
Yes, and the medium is a bit different, and the market is a bit different, so the funds maybe should reflect it a bit.
Yeah, and it will certainly make every effort to be realistic in terms of how this sector functions, and not all of the concepts that we have on the film side are likely to carry over into the gaming side. That will have to be. The rules will have to be defined in consultation with the gaming sector. We're not going to invent something that doesn't work for the gaming sector. In the film sector, the issues of authorship are important in terms of defining nationality. But even there, you find that for minority co-productions, where, say, a Croatian entity would be a minority co-producer of a film, it's still considered a Croatian film for our purposes. Even the authors may not be Croatian. There would be some spend requirement, but that's it.
Right.
I think one important point as well when devising the public funding scheme is really about the co-financing, the co-funding, because as I guess Croatia is the same. You cannot go up above the 50% co-financing from public money. I mean, there are some exceptions, like we have in Germany for small companies, but you always need co-financing. And I think there's a lot of questions about what is eligible and accessible for the independent studio for the co-financing of public money.
Yeah, and there are exceptions for de minimis projects. So a lot of that will be defined as we go forward. There's also a question about how tax policy can be used together with subsidies. We, as you mentioned, Thierry, and helped develop really our cash rebate program. It's very, very successful and shows that well-defined tax incentive schemes can make a big difference.
Yeah, and the gaming companies in Croatia have definitely showed the value of their product, definitely on the worldwide scale. Excuse me, Thierry, you wanted to add something?
No, I just for Chris, what you said. I mean, of course, it has to do with the de minimis, by some part, but what you see today, especially in Germany and France, is most of the big funds going away from the de minimis system and to get the exception from the European community. So, for example, Bayern, also Bavaria, and NRW, so Düsseldorf, Cologne, for example, now can go much above the de minimis system, and the new federal fund of 50 million in 2019 was under the de minimis, and now they got the agreement from the Commission, and now we can go much higher. So definitely in this industry, in this sector, we need higher amount of money, and to go that we need to get out of the de minimis to be able to give much more money to the game. To again, always in this idea of doing bigger projects, who have more chance to be more successful.
Yeah, no, of course, but as in other walks of life, the concept of de minimis is relative to your size, and for us, for France, something that could be considered de minimis here could be a substantial contribution. So that also has to be taken into account.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And now to hear it from the industry, Andrej Levensky here is presenting his company, Successful Studio Game Players, but also a cluster of Croatian game developers. So, Andrej, can you in the beginning, can you tell us something more about how does the cluster function, why was it formed, and what are financing and funding issues from Croatian developers? We heard that in France and in Germany, the public funds for gaming are set up. In Croatia, they're being developed, but I guess most of your funding or most funding for Croatian developers comes from private investors.
Currently from private investors and publishers. But original idea, Croatian game industry is currently jumping very high in very short period of time. Like Croatian game industry is maybe old 30 years so far, but the most interesting thing happens like in last 10 years. So 30 years ago there was maybe 1 or 2 studios, 15 years ago maybe 3 of them, and right now we have probably around 40 different studios. So because of that, we definitely needed to have some kind of platform where we can combine our experience and share the information how to be more successful worldwide, because it's still a very young industry here in Croatia, and we are showing very good signs competing with worldwide. But still, idea is to see how we can make some kind of shortcuts and to succeed a little bit better, because everyone wins if we combine our strengths. I will touch that later on. The first thing it was we are doing battle on 2 fronts. First one is sharing ideas and experiences what other bigger studios already experienced. So other smaller studios can jump over that fence very easily, and so they are not going through what we needed to go like 5 or 10 years ago. So by sharing our information, they can succeed much faster and bring attention back to the industry. So other thing is doing awareness, because industry is very young. So our local private investors are not aware how big is game industry, and if we share the information that we are growing 50%, that's much higher than the global industry rate, and that's only because it's young. So it's very good situation to enter into this kind of business. So idea is to bring the awareness in few different levels. One is with the government to see how they can help us to be more competitive around the world. Also to bring the awareness to private investors that this is a great industry to invest and doesn't take so much to start doing something, which is not a great situation for maybe other industries like car industries where you need much bigger investment at start. Other is to bring awareness to the general population that this is the industry where it's good idea to learn and educate yourself about this industry and to become, for example, artist or programmer, and so you will be able to find a job. When we were starting like more than 20 years ago, we were trying to learn something. Internet was not that much developed. There is only books, and we were learning for something that we didn't know if we'll be able to find a job. But our passion for the game development pushed us, and this is how we made some kind of ground for other studios. And other thing is people will definitely pursue this business even by starting their own studio or trying to learn this game development, and they will be able to find a studio where they can work. So that's why we are collecting all the studios here, help them with information. We are organized here and there trip to more popular game conventions like Gamescom. This is something that we were doing like 6 years in a row. That's the great way to meet publishers and guys from the industry, even hardware ones like Intel, Nvidia, gather the contacts and try to do something. And even for the guys that cannot co-finance trip, we always make some kind of brochures to show what we are doing in Croatia, and try to introduce even the one that doesn't have the finances to act worldwide. And regarding financing of this sector, yeah, it's a little bit problematic. That's the main idea why we need to bring this awareness, because there is money in the private sector, and it's very costly to keep the money and not invest it. So idea, if we bring the more attention to what we are doing, probably lots of more investors will be pursue that type of the business and invest something. Also, every help can be great. Our education system is pretty fine regarding physics and math and programming in general. So we have very good people that can work on great stuff, great projects. But even this idle cost for small studios, 5 people, can be a lot, and this is something they cannot finance by themselves. So any kickstart in any way can help them just to produce some kind of materials to show on this kind of Gamescom or different kickstarting projects, or maybe with the publishers. They need something to show, and this can be vertical slice of some kind of alpha. And these initial funds are the biggest problem, how to even start to show your full potential.
Thierry, you wanted to add something?
Yes, Andrei, thank you very much for this information. It's very, very useful. Can you give me or give us an idea of the profile of investors that you have? Also, are they investing in the games or in the companies? I was talking about that. I'm quite interested to understand more the type of people in Croatia putting money in games.
I can talk about our situation. When we started GamePars, it was 10 years ago. We were actually I was working in game industry much before. As employee, I was changed like 7 different companies before that, and I was always working with technology and doing on our 3D engines to develop the games. It was not easy like right now with Unity and Unreal Engine and great tools that we have today. We developed our stuff from scratch, and we were actually trying to find investors, and we were a little bit afraid that we will not be able to do that. So we developed some kind of project that can be pushed maybe to the government. It was virtual city, and it was long before VR is even available at that moment. And we were thinking like, we like to make the technology and nobody will finance the game, so we'll probably not get anybody. But over time, over 2 years, we developed lots of documents, technologies and stuff, and we were showing off this virtual city. It was Zagreb. And we, on one of the meetings, we find out that one investor is maybe interested in that project, but we said to them, okay, but mainly we are interested in games. And they said, oh, that's even better. And it's purely coincidence that this thing happened because they were actually publisher for the games here in Croatia. So they were buying out games worldwide and selling it here with full localization and fully prepared product for our country. So their idea was maybe this selling of the games will not be forever good business. So idea is maybe to produce something and go worldwide. So even if something happens locally, they will have some kind of project that can sell the worldwide and have better success. So their idea was pretty fine, and it was a struggle last 10 years, but they stick with us and we are together like family. So it was very painful for us, but we were in the end very lucky, and that took us for 2 years. I think right now it's a little bit better situation when we have proof that some of the big studios are here from Croatia. So we had the Nanobit sold their companies here and made huge. Everyone put eyeballs into the Croatia, what we are producing here. Same happened with our project Scam. So it's great situation to give other ideas where to invest. And I think it's better situation. We are not doing that right now, so I cannot feel how hard it is to find private investors, but I think it's much better situation than before.
Mm-hmm. So Nanobit and GamePars are blazing the trail for other smaller and younger Croatian studios. That's definitely great. But it's interesting that you mentioned that you learned everything by yourself, and that you didn't even know whether you can earn money from it, from making games. But so it's maybe now a much brighter situation, because Davor is working on a study program focused only on gaming. So in a short time, students in Croatia will be able to study game-related subjects on a state university. Davor, how are you developing the studies, and how is your collaboration with industry and academia going on?
Thank you, Srđan, and big thanks to all the speakers who took the floor before me. Well, we do it in the academic way. It's moving slowly but steadily. No, we to explain what we're doing, we do have a consortium of 5 different faculties from the University of Zagreb, coming from different study fields. So we have academies coming from the artistic field, we have technical faculties, the ones who are somehow in between, and we're looking to develop a study program, as you said, soon. So we should be starting with something next year, through which we hope, on one hand, would be able to build the capacity for the industry that's developing. So this was what Andrej was saying. You do have, every single day, you have more and more companies who are starting with game development business. On the other hand, you have companies who are developing their projects and are in need of people, educated people, so they don't have to do it by themselves, or the cluster has to do it. So we are looking into helping the whole industry in that way. But this is only one part of our agenda or mission, if you'd like. So the EDU for Games is as all the other study programs on the higher educational level, is trying to, yes, of course, learn and teach, which is one part of the mission. Then on the other hand, you have the research mission of the higher education, through which you build on the existing knowledge, you come up with the new knowledge, and you build that into the industry, which makes it a business case and in the end a new project. So this is the second part of the program, which we are trying to do and build up. And the last one is maybe the most important one, and that's the cultural, or if you like, the social, or the socially engaging part of it, through which we will be looking into the research of what games actually are nowadays in the community, what kind of a culture it is, how this is developing in our society, and how it's on the other hand, how it's developing the society and everyone in the society as well. As you can imagine, it's not an easy task, but we do have, I'd say, around 30 professors organized and working on this initiative. We are working steadily with the industry because we are in the end doing it for the industry, and we hope for the best. The event we are having now, the event that was there yesterday, the event we had last week for another EU project that we are running, is just the proof that I think this is the way to go. So we are actually bringing forward all the ideas, all the knowledge, all the people, bringing them together, and hoping something good will come out of this. And I'm sure it will.
So next year we can expect the first students in your program?
Yeah, the plan for EDU for Games is to prepare a full MA program. So it's going to be a 2-year program. But on the other hand, the industry states that they need people, or they needed people already yesterday. So we are working on vocational training programs, which will be piloting, if everything goes well, next summer. We'll keep on spreading the news, and we'll let the interested ones know about when it's going to start, and we hope we'll have the first students in the pilot of the program next summer.
Mm-hmm. How long will the vocational training programs last?
The idea is to have them for 1 semester, But since it's going to be basically a summer school, it's going to be an intensive program, and we plan to perform this July to September, so in 3 months altogether. Of course, we hope we'll be able to bring people together in person to have a live program, but if the situation doesn't get any better, we'll have the online program prepared as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you already know the topics of the vocational training? Are they decided definitely?
Yeah, so the whole program is thought up to give the full overview of all the necessary fields that people would need to know to start to work within the industry. That this doesn't mean one person has to know it all. This only means the program has different strands through which people can get educated in game design, in programming, in arts, and in production in the end. So with the 4 different strands, game design, game art, programming, and production, you would have the full set of skills with which people will be able to develop their own programs and their own projects. And in the end, if they decide to somehow find their way into the industry, either through their project, through their enterprises, or becoming part of the existing companies and getting involved in other game studio work.
Yeah, and maybe the funding HAVC is developing could be a great Kickstarter for some young new studios in Croatia that would otherwise wouldn't be maybe formed in the future.
Well, yes, of course, but you have to think about the education as a starting platform of its own. So this wouldn't burden HAVC's resources or any other public resources in the beginning. The education would, on one hand, help the industry, and as Andre was saying, the cluster, so they wouldn't need to do the education by themselves, meaning they would get more people and they would get the people prepared to start the work within the industry. This is one, let's say, opportunity. The other opportunity is that all the people would already have projects in the pipeline, so they would have projects they will develop through the study years. They will have the time to dedicate to develop the projects. So HAVC could get the projects that are prepared within the study program. And since, and Thierry was talking about this, it's a global industry. This is how we are building up the EDU for Games program. So we are trying to build it up with the international partners. We try to bring in as many international experts as possible, Thierry being one of them, of course. And through this, a certain kind of international network will be prepared and built. On one hand, as a capacity to develop ideas, projects, research projects, whatever. On the other hand, networking with international study programs and faculties will somehow prepare the floor for future co-production work, which is the topic of today's panel. So we can expect that young people who are now in their study years will meet some people from Germany, France. We already do have contact with French and German higher educational institutions. Through the student work, they will develop the network, which then will then work out as something as a co-production in the future. Mm-hmm. So we find this approach to be beneficiary on different levels. And as I said, we hope for the best. We are open for any kind of ideas. Mm-hmm. And cooperation. So just anyone feel free to join and help. And there is a lot of work. So help. It's
great to hear that the system is slowly but steadily forming and will give opportunity to other young studios who can follow in the footsteps of Nanobit and Gamepires. But since we're talking about co-production, let's maybe broaden the subject a bit. And I will ask Chris. You're the head of the Audiovisual Center, which focuses on films mostly. Do you see in the future maybe film artists or filmmakers or film professionals joining gaming industry, which is becoming much more propulsive, which, so to say, film industry is kind of where it is, and it doesn't, maybe the changes there won't be so drastic as in gaming in the next few years.
Yeah, thank you. I do see a future in which there will be crossover between the two, actually, and in both directions. Successful games in some cases can also be turned into interesting film projects. There's a sort of a natural advantage from a successful game, which is an audience that has expectations, and a lot of the advertising and awareness has already been created through the game. And of course, for the film sector, branching into games and creating gaming departments is something that I expect to see from the production entities here, and why not even broadcasters eventually. So yes, I see that in the future here, as is happening in other countries. I mean, so it's been an issue, a challenge, I think, for some of the bigger companies, even companies that have both gaming and film departments, like Sony, to create that convergence that allows them to take advantage of opportunities on both sides of the company, and they're constantly making efforts in that direction. I think that if one of the projects we're involved in here is the idea of building a center of excellence around a film studio, but that would be much more than a film studio, also technology. And I think that will also create that sort of convergence of knowledge, of creativity, that probably will benefit both sectors, and animation, of course. And when I talk about the film sector, I'm also talking about animation. And I think that the prospects of launching a film studio construction next year are good. There's interest on the part of investors, and I think that could help a lot in stimulating the dynamic between the two sectors.
Thierry, yes, please.
No, just to continue on that. I mean, we see obviously a lot of animation companies wanting to go to game. I mean, in our corporation market this year, we had 20% of the studios were animation studios, who basically had good stories, good IP, good assets, and they were looking for studios to do the coding, basically. And so I think there is this is where the first easy transfer is made between animation based on stories, good assets, and talk to studios who know how to code that. So I think that for that, co-production could work very well. I mean, as I say, we had really a few projects, and the gaming people were really amazed with the stories and the kind of artwork that the animation people could bring. I think they was really, really impressed by that. So I think there is a natural transfer between these two categories.
What we noticed doing these projects in Croatia with Institut Français and the Goethe Institute is that creative community in Croatia still isn't, for example, in Croatia still isn't so well connected, and there's so much resources that are not being connected and being put in games, or in, so to say, in any other medium, but games, since they're very, very vital and have a great potential. Yes, Davor, please.
Yeah, there is the other way around. Cooperation or possibility of developing cooperation, which we are working on as well in Croatia. So we are we do have another project that's not EDU for games, but the initiative is somehow part of one bigger scheme. And this is working with virtual production, which is growing up. And we do have the Mandalorian case and everything else that's happening in the industry. Epic and the Unreal Engine is the technology behind it. And it's basically building up the backdrop or the production design of a film in a game engine, and then using the technology to produce films in this converged technological way. And we had the project started for us 2 weeks ago. Last week we had presentations on this, and we had the first meetings for this. And it's actually really exciting to see film people and people coming from the gaming industries, and the structure of the partners within the project is such as well. So we have 2 film schools and we have 2 schools for game design cooperating together. And it's actually great to see what comes out of this co-op in there, because we do learn a lot from the gaming world and the people with the knowledge in the game design. On the other hand, in the film business, we have so many skills that are really valuable to them. And this, let's call it a technological experiment, is bringing everyone together and is bringing then the new creative potential and ideas from that.
You wanted to add something, Thierry?
No, sorry.
Sorry. Andrei, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can also share our ideas. We actually, when we started working on Scam, our idea is to have a very strong background story, what is happening in the game. Our idea from the beginning was how to cross-promote the game on all platforms if somehow become successful as the game on the PC, later on the consoles. So our idea is to have a very good story behind everything. So later on we can produce from the comics to the series and cartoons at one point. Yeah. So we are currently negotiating about series with some of the co-producers and directors to produce Scam as the series for platform like Netflix, Amazon, and also to have cartoons for the Scam. So this is something that we were thinking upfront to have something to produce stuff like that.
This is great news to hear that you're spreading your IP into other media. So I really wish you luck with that, and I hope that we can watch Scam on Netflix or any other platform soon.
Yeah, I also hope that something like that will be viable, and it's always slow negotiation, stuff like that, but it will definitely help to bring the IP to the next level, and later on in the future, you are working with much larger community if you're producing some kind of sequel, and then we can definitely bring it to another level.
I guess what is most important is that you already amassed a huge audience with your games, so it's kind of a leverage for negotiation, right?
Yeah, exactly, because there is already few million people that are waiting to see that, and it's really great opportunity.
Great stuff. I wanted to ask Davor, since both Chris and you mentioned the centers of excellence and the studios. Now you're already collaborating with a local incubator in Novska. Also, you're connecting all of the parts of the puzzle in Croatia. So, can you tell us more about those kinds of projects and incubators as the basis for maybe possible co-production too?
Yeah, well, the cooperation with the incubator is basically another cluster of skills and the knowledge that's already out there, but whose potential is not maybe used all the way. So we are on one hand looking into implementing everything we develop within the study program in the incubator. We learned this from our German and French partners. They all develop incubators that are somehow aligned with schools. So you have schools developing incubators of their own. We are lucky to have the incubator in Croatia already running and doing a pretty good job as well. And one idea is to just connect the two things. So you would have the study program as the beginning. You would develop projects through the study program, and then you would develop them further on and develop them as business cases later on in the incubation phase. So this is one thing we are developing with them. The other part is performing the vocational training programs within the incubators. So you would raise the knowledge and the capacity of everyone who's in there and who needs some kind of specific or some broader type of education. And one last thing, the incubator does have a fantastic technological base, which can be used as a research platform, not necessarily for gaming or film, but for any kind of research topic that could be of any industry interest. So whether it's in a gamified environment done for, I don't know what kind of business, whether it's a 3D environment that's developed for some other business, or if it's a research project whose core is actually in game development or audiovisual medium, it doesn't matter. They do provide fantastic technological base, and they're interested to cooperate on research projects. And we find this to be a fantastic opportunity, and we're lucky to actually have them in Croatia. We haven't touched the talk about the co-production work, but as Thierry was saying, research could be considered to be co-production in a way, because you do co-work and you do co-fund those projects, and there is an added value in the end, even though it's not a commercial project per se.
Yeah. And maybe when you're a part of an incubator, it's much more easier to connect with somebody abroad, because you have you're not alone. So maybe even that fact could be helpful.
Yeah, there is a network of European incubators being built. This is actually run by the French incubator that's affiliated with Engmin, the French school. From what I know, Thierry might know more about it. And we've started the talks, so we got them in contact with people from Pismo incubator here in Croatia, and we hope that Pismo will become part of this big incubator network of the European incubators and business accelerators.
Right. I wanted to ask Andre. We spoke about funding, and mostly about. I mean, we spoke about state funding. We spoke about public funding. But as it seems now, most of the funding in Croatian gaming is private. But and we see that the Croatian studios have only recently been getting the support from European Union. So is there an interest in the industry for state funding, or it's something that Croatian game developers are not accustomed to, or maybe some of the bigger studios maybe don't even count on the state funding or something like that?
Yeah, that's the problem. I can call it like that, because one is to start company, and later on is to survive to some degree, because all these funds that can be given from the government or media project is something that are for the companies that are already established. So we were actually financed one of our project with Hamak Bikra, and at that point we needed to have a pretty huge amount of the funds on our account to support 50% of this kind of project. And for us, it was pretty huge amount of money, and this is something that we already earned by having our project and selling it worldwide. So idea is that's the probably reason why it's probably always the private investors, because somebody needs to kickstart everything and to produce this some kind of pitch and to have the finance to co-finance even these funds that they can get from different sources. So probably there is large amount of talents and ideas how to start the company, but how to help them to start. And when you already have the funds and the money, then you are probably negotiating with second tier, and that's the international investors and probably publishers that can do the marketing for the game and do the financing, and then this part is probably skipped. So how to bring closer this financing, and this can be even a smaller amount of money, but the people without any past experience can get it somehow, maybe with some kind of restriction, of course, because it's not idea to pitch any possible project. Me and my friends started to work on something, but how they can start much easier, because maybe we are missing a few talents here and there because of that.
Mm-hmm. So some kind of smaller funding for beginners, you think, will be a great kickstart for a part of the industry?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe to move some kind of restriction, idea is maybe think more about commercial success, because commercial success is bringing definitely more money into our country, and then we are again paying the taxes and spending the money here, and bringing businesses to the next level. So idea is maybe to remove some barriers how to enter this kind of because from here and there is game needs to be story based, then need to have some kind of value, and that's maybe a problematic. It was for us, for example, when we pushed the Scam, we had a problem because our last game was racing game, and very successful racing game. We had even like a small story behind it, but there is rule, for example, for media, that racing games cannot be evaluated. And even if your next project is story based, fantastic one, and we see that Scam is commercially very successful, we didn't pass the bar. So that can be a problem, because it can filter some great stuff, and we always need to see again what is commercially great. That's if we want to develop this kind of industry, and to have also something special for the game developers, because IT industry in Croatia is pretty big, and they'll have lots of financing and resources to get the money and start something. And if gaming industry is generalized as IT, then we'll have the problem, because lots of things we cannot get from IT industry. And if we get some kind of help from the government for the game industry, then it needs to be exactly for the game industry, because lots of big IT companies that already bringing billion kunas of revenue, they will also apply to this kind of project. So this needs to be strictly for the games.
Right. So you need some kind of set of rules that will differentiate you from IT industry, and also from maybe movie industry, or somewhere, so to say, somewhere in between IT and art.
Definitely, and we can see the trend. It was like, I think 21 billion kunas was the complete IT industry revenue. We are around 500 million right now, with probably 15 companies that are producing something, and complete IT in Croatia is 5,000 companies. So if you see what kind of percentage are produced by only game studios, that doesn't get any help so far.
Right.
So there is huge potential to go there. Yeah.
Huge potential and a lot of added value. I hope that this panel will help also inform anyone interested in starting gaming, but also maybe also officials to work more closely with Croatian game industry. And since we're nearing the end of the panel, I will ask Thierry a very practical question. You gave us a great overview of co-production opportunities in European gaming, but what do you suggest Croatian studio what Croatian Studio's first steps will be to maybe starting a co-production with a French or German studios. How to start? How to establish the connection?
Well, I mean, obviously, I would be very interested to explore some collaboration with you and the Croatian Film Center to bring maybe to select 2 Croatian companies to come and pitch at the market in September. As I put, we are going to start the call for project in April and talking to different countries because, as I say, we've got some interest. So maybe we could explore to identify 1 or 2 companies. I think 2 is a good number. 1 is maybe going to be a bit alone there. So 2 Croatian companies, maybe to present them and to help them to pitch and meet French and German and other. I mean, as I say, this year we will open it again. I don't think we can open it to too many countries because it's too difficult. Last year we had Africa and Belgium. Africa was, as I say, more pilot. I think if we're talking about 2, maximum 3 countries on top, will be the maximum. We know the Swiss are already interested, yeah, Croatia would be great to discuss that with you. Yeah, definitely.
Great to hear that, and I hope the Croatian teams will collaborate in your co-production forum next year. We've heard some great stuff today. I mean, next year the new study program for gaming is being open. Croatian Audiovisual Center is starting to fund video games, and also we've heard that Gamepires is developing their brands come into other media. So it's all great stuff, and thank you for everything you're doing. And I hope we'll see each other sometimes in the future and talk about some concrete results. Everything now seems very inspiring. I would like to thank you all for participating in this panel, and I would also like to thank our audience for sticking with us for 2 hours. So take care and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Sergeant.
Thank you.
Sergeant.
Good night.
Bye.
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 Bye to everyone.